What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Shop Mini RC. I'm Ken, and today we are looking at the new H3, that's Hobby Plus, y'all, and their new, boom, Evo Pro. We're excited for this guy. Before we get into this thing, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell. Do all those things you do at the beginning or end of videos you like, channels you want to support, all that good stuff. Speaking of supporting the channel, guys, check out our swag down below. We only make like $1, maybe $2. We're just trying to make sure our prices, because you have to have a price on there, and if you put the price too low and they raise their prices, whatever. So we put like a little buffer, but we don't make any money on it other than you showing off the channel and your support for it, and we really appreciate it. Also, we have channel members. You can join, become a channel member. You can see all the videos before there's ads, a little bit early, and there's other perks and stuff, and you can check that out. Either way, we need to dive into this guy. I'm just too excited. This thing looks sick. Let's go. Well, here we have it, guys, the Evo Pro. So Hobby Plus has been working since about 2018 with mini crawlers and doing hobby grade mini crawlers. In fact, they would say that they did the first hobby grade mini scale crawler, 1/18 or 1/24 scale, back in 2019. I can't remember exactly when the Axial came out. Or the Enduro 24, but those were pretty early too. But basically, Hobby Plus has been in the game since the beginning for the mini crawlers. They started with the CR18 as far as the 18 scale is concerned, and then they went to a CR18P and a CR18P Evo, and now we're at the CR18P Evo Pro. I know it's a mouthful, but we're going to compare those and show you kind of the evolution. And let's just do a quick overview of this guy, though. Obviously, this sick Lexan body. This is really what's attracting a lot of people to this truck, I think. It's basically a comp style, almost like a cliffhanger style body. Very low COG, right? The cab's super low. It's very aggressive. It's pinched so that you've got plenty of clearance for these huge 68 millimeter tires. And yeah, it just looks good. In my opinion, I think this is probably one of the best looking RTRs trying to be a comp truck out there. Basically, there are some very good scale trucks out there, obviously, but when you're talking about just a Lexan comp truck, this is kind of taking the cake here. I really dig that it's got kind of this matte black on the back with the gloss and clear windows, super nice. Stickers look good. Well done overall. Like, there's not much more I can say about it. It looks fantastic, though. I love that it's got some more detail in it than some of the other similar style bodies. You know, you got the raised hood, kind of a tucked grill, the drop in the bed here a little bit. I just like that it's got actual design work and details in it. So huge kudos for that one. Good job, guys. Here's the meat and potatoes, though. Like I said, we're running 68 millimeter tires, and these are on 1.3s, I believe. Let's measure them. So yeah, we're looking at 1.3 inch beadlocks. They are true beadlocks, so you can always change the tires out. You'll probably be changing the wheels before you change the tires, though, because these tires are looking good. They're plenty supple. I feel like they've got some really good grip. The pattern's pretty cool. I dig that. I think they're going to work really well. You're not going to have to change these out anytime soon, unless you're wanting something specific. I think one of the few things about this truck that makes it a RCMCCA Class 3 is just the wheels and tires, the size of the tires. I think this guy will pass as a Class 2 if you change these to 64 millimeter tires. You are a little wide, so it's like 10 millimeters wider than the normal Evo. So pretty wide truck. Let's get a total width here. We're right at 5.2 inches, plus 5.25 inches, basically, a little over 5.25 inches. Actually, looks like the rear might be a little wider than the front. Interesting. 5.4. Oh no, they're the same. 5.4. All right, so 5.5 inch wide track, basically. RCC MCCA rules for the mini crawlers state 7-inch gates for Class 2 and 3. So you'll have basically an inch on each side if you're trying to keep this. But if you're going to be changing over to smaller tires, you may also want to put some smaller hexes on there, so your width is a little less, or change the offset on your wheels, and that'll bring you in just a little bit. But then you'll be Class 2 legal with all this body clearance. We do have an angled skid, which is pretty slick. That angled skid's really going to get a low center of gravity and help us with breakover angle. I love the way that thing is just nice and smooth across the bottom. Like, pretty slick. These stock links are pretty good. When you go with the aftermarket links, unfortunately, they have giant eyelets in them, and they will cause more hangups probably than they're worth. So it'd be cool to see some more link options, maybe some high clearance links that utilize this style specifically for this truck, just to keep it nice and smooth. That would be one thing if I was going to ask for any upgrade or change in the design of the CR18s, including the FX118 Fury Wagon. They all use the same skid. Is adjustments on the skid so that the links were set up in the transmission, so there's a little bit of clearance for aftermarket links and for it to be nice and flat here. I hate how these protrude, and like I said, when you get the aftermarket links, like these guys here, you can see on the Fury Wagon, they end up extending up and beyond the skid plate, which just kind of creates more potential for hangups. So putting the aftermarkets on here would end up doing the exact same thing, because these are the same links that the Fury Wagon come with stock. So yeah, it would just be nice to have some different options using this kind of connection, at least on this end. This end doesn't matter so much, but here it does. But this is such a smooth, clean angle here. Oh man, it's going to be so good. Of course, we're on portals. Like I said, we have some extra wide axles. They extended the actual axle shaft that comes out of the portal to get you a little bit extra width there. So that's kind of nice. You'll be able to, again, have more options for offsets on your wheels with that, and hex wideners. They come with oil-filled shocks. These are the same as the FX118. They're pretty smooth. We haven't done anything to them. These springs are pretty soft. You can see here, it basically just sits almost full droop. They're fully compressed. But the springs, again, you want springs on your shocks typically. They do help a little bit, even if they're super soft, kind of keep the axle down when you're articulating over obstacles and whatnot. Springs are what help keep the traction down. So when you run no springs, unless you have a ton of weight on your axles, you're kind of losing that benefit of pushing down as you articulate. And it helps keep, like I said, keep the traction even and consistent and much more smooth. And then we've got here this 360 milliamp battery. It's 2S. Pretty slick. It's very similar to the Furatech in dimensions, or the other Hobby Plus in dimensions as far as the length and the width, but the height is much smaller. And I really like that. I think they did a good job switching that over to a lower profile battery. Really helps keep weight lower, and yeah, it's probably going to help a lot with the balance of this rig. If you put a big battery on the side, it's going to cause it to have more weight on one side. So we'll weigh this guy here in a minute. It's also got the 2-speed. So that's what's part of what is the Evo, right? An Evo is a 2-speed. The Pro is all these changes we're looking at, and especially this guy here. Look at this huge motor. It's a 280 58 turn big block. This thing has a ton of power. One downside to putting this big old motor in here is you do hit on your links just a little bit in the front. You can see we have about that much clearance that we could have had to have a little extra compression, but it's hitting right there on the link on one side, just a little, but I don't think it's going to really matter. Under full compression, you can see this side compresses all the way, but this side's got just a little bit. But again, I am not overly worried about that, especially with how low slung this rig is sitting already. You could probably raise it just a little bit, get even more clearance underneath here if you really wanted to. Just move the shocks down one, and then you'll have full articulation. But I don't think that's going to matter. Your full side to side is still there. It's not hitting so much that you're not, able to articulate completely and compress the shock completely. Just when it's equally compressed, you do hit just a little bit there, tiny bit. Anyway, but you do have the benefits of this big motor, and it sits really low, which is good, right? You want the motor to sit low, at least as low as possible, to get that weight and that center of gravity much lower. This chassis is super slick. You can see how forward the shock mounts are. I do wish they kind of brought this shock mount further back, the tower, so that it could have came all the way to back here and then give you a couple more options, because if you don't want your shocks leaning in that far, you don't really have any other option there. It is very, very tucked in. Same here. They could have brought it forward just a little bit. I'm not saying to move the whole thing forward because I do like all the shock options here, but at this wheelbase, this is about the max I would want to lay my shocks down. The more you lay your shocks inward, the more travel you're going to get, but also the more sloppy the truck becomes. If you want to have crazy articulation nation BS where you're making an X, sure, yeah, lay your shocks all the way down, whatever, but then why even put shocks on? You're basically completely negating the whole point of the shocks. Also, having that much articulation and flex is just not good for performance. It's just going to make the truck sloppy. So like I said, this is about the max I would really want to lay them down. You could maybe go one more down back, or down and back one half here, because these are kind of on the half. Maybe, but I don't know. You're going to get really, really sloppy the further back those things go, and just too much articulation. Realistically, good articulation is about one tire height. Okay, these are smaller, obviously, but if I took one of these off, this is about one tire height. And so that's about where you want it, which is good. More than that's just, again, too much, too sloppy. The more completely vertical your shocks are, the more they're actually doing what they're supposed to do. They're dampening and they're keeping traction down. And the more angled in you go, the less they are. But the more articulation and flex you gain. Anyway, sorry guys. Overall, though, I do dig this chassis a lot. This is a fantastic design. I just wish we were able to move these back just for adjustability purposes. If you wanted to go with some shorter shocks, you would at least have an option. Here you kind of only can go with longer shocks, and that shock angle is always going to be pretty extreme. Sliders. Finally, somebody's getting it where we've got sliders that come with RTRs where we can throw the battery on the slider. Fantastic. You've even got our shift servo here on the side. I don't think it relies on the slider at all. I think the slider is independent. The shift servo mounts to the chassis, because this guy looks like it's got some flex in there, so I don't think it's mounted to it at all. We can take a closer look later. But shift servo into your 2-speed transmission. All your electronics back here with all these different lighting options. Now, I don't know how much of them translate or how they'll work on your channel 4 here, but my guess is it's very similar to all the other FlySky RTR electronics and their lighting kits that come with. This guy has no lights, just in case you were wondering. It is meant to be a comp crawler. Again, class 2, I think this guy's going to kill it. Some smaller wheels and tires, or if you want to run class 3, you can start to get a little bit more extreme here. But yeah, fantastic. One of the downsides to portals and 2-speeds, though, with all the benefits you get, there are some downsides. Downside is the slop. You have a little bit of slop there. You can see as I hold the drive shaft. And this is for all portals. This is not just this truck. Pretty much portals across the board give you a ton of slop because of the portal gears. Now, some overdrive gears will probably help with that a little bit. And we've got some we'll throw in here in another video. But you can see there is a little bit of slop there. And then even slop in the drivetrain back to the transmission. You can see how much by looking at the drive shaft here you've got. And that's part of being a 2-speed. So just some things to keep in mind. Now, the benefits, though, are look at this ground clearance. Like, holy crap. I mean, this guy's sitting right at, man, let's scoot it up a little bit. Like 35, 34 millimeters. Yeah, almost 36. So 36 millimeters of ground clearance to the pumpkin. That's pretty dang good, guys. That's pretty nuts. So portals do give you a ton of extra ground clearance over your axle here. The only part you have to worry about are your portal covers. So when people try to minimize, or manufacturers want to minimize their C-hubs and the portal covers or get them tucked into the wheel as much as possible, helps with that clearance and gives you less places to snag on. But that's the biggest benefit, right? Portals give you tons of space. They also have gear reduction, so that helps a little bit. As far as the 2-speed is concerned, I don't know how much of a fan I am of a 2-speed in a dedicated comp rig, but one of the things I like about this guy is the price point to entry. This is like under $170. I think it's like $165 or something. Again, I don't like to do prices because they change so much, but I think at the time of shooting this, they're like $165. $165 is insane for a truck of the capabilities that this thing has. The 2-speed is an added bonus for somebody who's kind of stepping their foot into the first mini crawler or first little mini comp crawler. It's really fun because it gives you the ability to do some actual technical crawling, some really good technical crawling with low end torque, great modulation, great control. And then if they want to, they can flip it into 2-speed, get that wheel speed going, go rip it around the yard a little bit or rip it around the trails with their buddies and even their bigger trucks. You know, you'll be able to kind of keep up because you've got a 2-speed. When you have a truck that has a single speed, and I think the T-Word truck, out of the box, great trail rig, horrible crawler. You got to switch the gears over to crawl gears. When you put crawl gears in there, fine, great crawler. Now it's slow and modulates and you can crawl, but it literally moves at a snail's pace. You can walk faster than it goes, so you're not trailing it. So you have to pick one or the other, which is fine, but a lot of people like to be able to kind of just on the fly change it up, and I think this is a great introduction to that. That's one of my favorite things about 2-speeds is really you get the best of both worlds. And in these tiny trucks, you like to be versatile. You like to be able to throw it in your backpack, go crawl, go trail, whatever. So huge plus on the 2-speed, but again, it does add a little bit of weight. Does add a little bit of slop, not much from the 2-speed. Most of that's from the portals. And it just gives you a lot of versatility in how you drive the truck, which is super awesome. Now, I'm sure as this platform grows and more people get it, there will be people that lock out the 2-speed or swap over transmissions, go to brushless. They do make a brushless version of this. Not really available in the US. You'd have to order it from outside the US. They're sticking to the brush version in the US, but the brushless version is out there, and it's also a 2-speed. But yeah, people will be able to swap these over to, single speeds, a little bit more lower, even lower profile, more aggressive on the crawl gears, which means they're not gonna be able to trail it, but it'll crawl super, super well. I mean, insanely well. This guy already does, but just imagine taking it and lowering the COG, lowering the weight, getting rid of some of that slop, and going brushless nuts. I mean, it would be absolutely nuts. Basically top tier class 3 type rig. It also has the counter rotating output shaft. So if you want, you can get the axles. I think the aluminum ones allow you to flip the axle around, put the ring gear on the opposite side, and then put the counter rotating shaft in there, run it to your axle, and basically eliminate all torque twist, right? Because now you have one shaft running this way and one shaft running this way. So they're counter rotating. Which will help prevent the truck from torque twisting, especially with these soft springs. The softer your springs, the more laid down your springs, the more torque twist you're going to get. Also, torque twist sometimes can come from resistance in the driveline, right? Like if you have binding in your axle somewhere, and that motor's trying to turn it, it's going to turn the chassis because the axles aren't turning freely. So if you ever have torque twist, just keep that in mind. It's either binding or your springs are too soft or your shocks are laid down too far. Okay, but a way to fix that with super soft springs and laid down shocks is counter rotating shaft. All right, man, I know that's a lot. We're trying to just cover it all from an overview standpoint. We do have our traditional FlySky RTR. These are made by FlySky. It's got our dip switches to change drag brake and all that kind of stuff. Your drive mode, so you have forward brake reverse or forward reverse. Obviously for a crawler, you want forward reverse, and then all of our trims. So we've been over these quite a bit. You can check out some of our other videos on them if you're looking for deeper dive info. What else do we have here? Our body mounts, super low This one's all the way down. I do kind of wish that they didn't trim these off. I wish you had a couple adjustment options. At least you have two here. Would have been nice if they kept that second one here so we could raise this if we wanted to for some reason. There may be a reason to, or if we change bodies, we could raise our posts, lower our posts just a little bit. Doesn't have to be much. At least, like I said, this one's at least got two options. But you're good to go. You don't really need to adjust it. This thing fits so flush. I mean, it is literally all the way as low as you're getting it. You might be able to lower this front just a little, that one more notch, because you do have some clearance up there, it looks like. So you can get that front just a tiny bit lower if you wanted. But this back, I mean, you can't get any lower with the electronics here like this. Another thing that I do like is they've got bumper mounts on the front and the rear. If you did ever want to change it out, maybe make it, take it from a comp rig to a higher performing trail rig, scale it out a little bit. I don't know if you'd be able to do it with this body, so you'd have to cut holes in the body. But there are mounts for bumpers if you wanted to run bumpers. Now, we'll go ahead and open this guy up a little bit. We'll probably show you the portal gears. The servo is all plastic gears on the servo, so just be aware of that. Shift servo is going to be the same, but that's less important as far as being plastic or metal gears. So this may be an upgrade point at some point. Plus, everybody loves a super high torque servo, so I wouldn't expect people to run this servo forever. We'll open up our diffs, see what our ring and pinion look like in there, if they're plastic or metal. I don't know if we're going to open up the transmission at this point. I believe it's all plastic in the transmission. And yeah. All right, so let's look at the evolution of the CR18P. The CR18 is a non-portal version, and then we have all these are Ps, which are portal versions. This is the regular CR18P non-Evo, non-Pro. You can see we're running a much smaller motor. It is very low COG, but it does mean that we can't run a full 4-link suspension. So that's a downside. It also still does hit on the motor just a little bit. These shocks are just regular friction dampener shocks. They are, I'll say it right now, not good at all. Very bouncy. Just very, very budget shocks. The tires are decent, but they are much smaller, obviously. These are more trail rigs. You also, a huge difference, have servo on chassis versus servo on axle. And you have that even on the Evo here. So the Evo is very similar. It's pretty much the same chassis rails, except now we have a 2-speed and the shift servo. Okay, same shock dampers. The motor is higher up, which does raise your center of gravity, but it gives you a ton more clearance. So now you can run a full 4-link if you wanted, but they still ran a 3-link here for whatever reason, probably because it was just a move to the different transmission from here to here. Okay, but definitely an upgrade in the motor, upgrade in the transmission. You can see our battery location still in the rear, but they did move it. I think we changed this a little bit, actually. We moved our battery forward on this battery tray, so there's a little bit of a change there. But either way, the battery is in the back here, whereas here they move the battery up to the skid, which is nice. They also move the electronics to the back here. You can see they were up front, but they had to make room for servo on axle, as well as this giant motor here. The axles are going to be exactly the same on the Pro versus, well, on all three of them. So all three of them are going to be running the exact same axles. They're all the CR18P portal axles, but again, now we've got upgraded shocks. We've got the skids, the side skids. We've got the bigger motor, 2 speeds over here, 1 speed over here. Definitely a huge motor here. You can take this motor and it'll pop right into here if you did want to make a little bit smaller motor to help lighten up a little bit the weight and give you some more clearance underneath. You could swap that over. There's also brushless upgrades, obviously, for this from people like FearTech. What else? Our drive shafts. I believe our drive shafts on this guy are full plastic drive shafts, which is interesting because we have metal ball joints in there. The actual ball joint is metal in both of these, but in this guy, I believe it's plastic. But the drive shaft is beefier. It's a much beefier drive shaft. So probably going to be a little bit more durable there. This is a 3-piece drive shaft. You can see there's the center male piece versus these guys are just single or 2 pieces, front and rear. You can also see how beefy it is. Look at that. It looks shorter. It's not shorter. It's the same length as this. It's just much beefier on the U-joint portions. So that's a good upgrade for sure. But again, the big things here are going to be the bigger motor, servo on axle, which is huge, right? A lot of people have to convert these guys from the chassis mounted servo to the servo on axle. The benefits of the servo on axle are it puts weight on your axle versus weight on your chassis, and you always want to have the weight as low as possible, so this gets it even lower, and you want it unsprung. You don't want the weight on the chassis having to be supported by your shocks, because that creates body roll and things like that. Having the servo mounted on the chassis is the most performance-based location you can put a servo, especially if you start to upgrade your servo and put like a heavier aluminum servo, things like that. It's going to be a benefit. A heavier servo will be a benefit here versus a detriment here. So huge upgrade by going servo on axle. Huge upgrade with the oil-filled shocks. The big motor, that's debatable whether you want a lot of speed and torque or lower profile, lighter, and more clearance. So that's kind of a wash there. You can go either way. The skids, huge upgrade by being able to put our battery on the skid, move it forward. We love that. And then just getting the whole thing lower. These chassis, I mean, this is also a huge upgrade. Look at the chassis difference, right? Much higher performance chassis, angled skid, more shock mounting positions, ultra lightweight aluminum. Yeah, definitely an upgrade there. So again, I just want to kind of show you the difference between the CR18P, CR18P Evo, and CR18P Evo Pro. And one last thing that's huge, right, other than the wheels and tires, because we forgot to mention that. There's a big difference there. The Evo Pro comes with hex hardware. Everywhere is a hex. It's not Phillips. The only Phillips is on the servo here and the drive shaft, which is pretty typical, but everywhere else is all hex head screws, versus the Evo is Phillips heads still. So the regular CR18P and the CR18P Evo all have Phillips head screws, which we all hate. So they definitely listened, and now we've got hex heads everywhere, which is freaking sweet. These guys should be 1.5 millimeter. Yep. So they're 1.5 millimeter hex heads, which is freaking awesome. So big kudos on that as well. Oh, look at the turn radius on this guy. Holy crap. With no binding. I mean, let's go. Pretty nutso, guys. That's pretty insane. You can turn that up and down using your dual rate here. So if you don't want to risk breaking an axle, you can always turn it down just a tad, or if you're rubbing on the body. But we're going to max it out for now. Ooh, buddy. Here we can check out our weight distribution and our total weight. Looks like total weight's right at 420 grams. We've got a 55-45 weight bias, 55 in the front, 45 in the back, so that's pretty good. And then 50-50 on the split left to right. It's kind of bouncing between 49-51 and 50-50, but overall seems pretty dang good. Even with the body off, it's still a 45-55 and a 50-50. So that tells us the body is very balanced, which is good. Yeah, it's gonna get even better when we put some of the brass on the front with the brass portal covers. That'll definitely bring us much closer to the 60-40 that's kind of desired. But yeah, right at 393 without the body. Seems good for a stock rig. right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed some of that running video there. We're going to open this guy up and show you what's going on in there. Also, I just wanted to point this out. I forgot to mention it before we ran, but look at this. That approach angle is over 90 degrees, and same with the departure. I mean, departure even more so. That's pretty insane. You could literally walk up to a wall and climb it without hitting body or bumper. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, it's hard to not have that kind of approach angle when you've got this big a tire, but still, the point is, awesome clearance. All right, let's go ahead and get into this guy and show you what's in here. Getting your wheels and tires off, super simple. You can use your hex that's included, the big end, to help get this little cap off, and then get right in there on the actual wheel nut itself. One thing that's kind of cool is this guy's hex hubs. The stock hex hubs look like disc brake rotors. Pretty neat. You can see how wide these guys are, though. That is a wide hex. So that's what's giving you that extra offset, wheelbase, extra 10 millimeters are these guys here. So unfortunately, if you have a regular Evo, you're not going to be able to throw these on there because you're not going to have enough axle shaft. You'll have to get aftermarket or upgraded or replacement part axle shafts, and then you can widen out your regular Evo. But the Pro comes with it. Don't lose your tiny pins here as you're taking things apart. These guys are pretty small, little axle pins. And yeah, look at that shaft. Man, that's a long axle shaft. While we do have a ton of extra good turn radius, one of the downsides of the extra long axle shaft in this offset here is scrub radius, which will actually reduce your turning radius a little bit. But I think with the amount of turn radius we have, it's going to really offset any amount of scrub radius we have. We had no issues making turns and lining things up because it's got so much turn radius. But just be aware that if you were to go more narrow here, you're able to bring your wheels and tires in just a little bit with a smaller hex maybe, or some negative or positive offset wheels, and get your center of your tire closer to the pivot point of the knuckle. You'll have even more actual turn radius, when you're actually turning. Not the knuckle turn, but the actual on-ground turn radius. Anyway, now we'll go ahead and just pull off the portal cover. And bam. Now this guy is running on bushings, it looks like, so that's unfortunate. It would be nice to have bearings, especially in a comp rig. We're not exactly going to be going in the water and mud with our comp rigs, generally speaking, so the waterproofness, low maintenance of a bushing is not really as advantageous here. We definitely would rather have some smoother operation. So would be nice to have bearings in there, but that's okay. I'm sure there are bearing kit upgrades for these guys, for the CR18s, for the regular, the Evo, and the Pro. I'm sure they're all exactly the same, so you can snag up any of those to get that upgrade going on. I'll go ahead and put this guy back together, and then we can look at the diff cover here. See what's inside there. They are metal gears, though, so that's good. Go ahead and open up our rear diff cover here. It's a little easier than the front, with the steering links in the way and whatnot. These are actual ring and pinion. Most of the 18th scale stuff is ring and pinion. I mean, I don't know of anything that's actually not. The SCX24 is worm gear, so that's a little bit different sort of design from an axle standpoint. Ring and pinion is going to give you a little bit better wheel speed, but worm gear gives you kind of natural drag brake and more torque, generally speaking. All right, so there we go. Metal gears in there as well. Is that pinion down in there? Yeah, metal too, but also bushings. But these should be pretty bulletproof, pretty strong. We've never had any issues with any of our CR18P axles and the diffs stripping out or anything like that. So good to know that there's still metal in there. Sometimes companies end up doing little changes where you're like, why did they change that? And it just has to do with their production process, and they end up with plastic gears in there for some reason. But nope, we're still on the metal. So very good, all metal portal, all metal diff. Dig that for sure. Well, we got our front wheel and tire off. Let's go ahead and pull off this shock. We're going to take that guy apart and show you what the inside of the shock looks like. Okay. There is a nice little bladder in there that helps prevent like cavitation in the shock and the shock oil, so things stay running smooth. If air gets in there and whatnot, it just helps really kind of smooth things out. So that's definitely nice. This is a plastic cap end here. The shock housing and link or ball end here, these are all plastic, but this is an aluminum adjustment collar with aluminum threaded cap. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and see what our O-ring situation looks like. Pop our retainer off, pop our spring out. We should be able to just pop this cap and then see what our O-rings look like in here. If I can get them out. There's definitely an O-ring right there. I think this guy's a single O-ring. That's how this one's set up. Yeah, there's just a single O-ring in there. Hopefully it doesn't leak. Our Fury wagons haven't leaked, and I believe it's the same setup, so that's surprising but good. A lot of times manufacturers will use 2 O-rings and a bushing in the center, so you'll basically have O-ring, bushing, O-ring. But these guys look like it's just the single O-ring. As long as it doesn't leak, I don't care how they do it. Smooth and doesn't leak. And this guy is very, very smooth, so the single O-ring will probably help make it more smooth, for sure. You have less binding on the shaft and whatnot, but again, it could potentially leak a little bit. But our Fury wagons, same shock, no leaking yet. So I don't know. Maybe they got something else going on in there that is helping prevent it from leaking, or it's just super tight tolerances. So either way, seem good. Let's get it back on. I do want to point out that the shock mount, the shock tower is not threaded. So you do have to use a nut no matter what. Somebody was asking in one of the groups if the shock tower was threaded, and then they just put a nut on there for extra security, but no, it's not. It's completely open, which is fine. Just make sure you always have a nylon lock nut on there or use thread lock, because you don't want that guy popping out. I guess we'll go ahead and pop the transmission out real quick since we're already here, and we'll open it up and show you what kind of pinions in there, just so you know, and the gears, all that goodness. So to get the transmission out on this guy, you got these 3 screws on the bottom, plus there is a small screw here on the side with the shift servo. You got to back that guy out, and that should let you get to your transmission now. Do be aware of your shift linkage. This is not going to be the easiest to get off of here. Let's see, should I just pull the horn off? I think maybe we just pull the servo horn off. Or the whole servo. Let's do the whole servo. That way I don't have to worry about recentering the servo horn or having it trimmed wrong. I think these 2 screws are easy enough as it is. All right. Now our servo is loose, and our motor and trans can pop out a little easier. There we go. And we'll go ahead and pop our linkage off. Maybe. There we go. You just got to angle it right and then twist. You're good to go. Alrighty. So there we go. That guy is out now. Let's go ahead and pull off the motor mount here. I believe there is one more screw on the inside. So we'll have to pull off this drive shaft and pull off the whole front casing here. All right. Drive shaft's off. Remember, when you put your drive shaft back on, unless you're doing counter rotating, it's always the same drive shaft in line, front and rear. Then this is the counter rotating. Let's go ahead and get this cover off and take a look inside. Alrighty. Look at that. Did I say plastic gears earlier? I meant all metal gears. Bushings, all metal gears. Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Shift linkage, all that is all metal. Everything's metal. Sweet. Again, the only thing that would make this even better is if it was all bearings. Now, my question is, how come... Oh, I guess we pull it off with these two as well. All right, let's get this back together and we'll try to get this motor off. There we go. Ta-da! So there's our pinion and our main spur. So there's an 11-tooth pinion. Everything's nice and greased up, which is a good thing for sure. I am overly impressed with this guy. I love it. Like I said, the only thing that I'm complaining about is bearings. I wish we had bearings. But again, the price point is just nuts. Under $170 at the time of this recording. And it's all metal gears. All metal. We'll go ahead and get this guy back together. And when you're doing your drive shafts, make sure you get them in phase. If you don't know what that is, it's basically making sure that the U-joints are lined up in the same direction on both sides. So let me get this guy in here and then I will show you. Essentially, it's making sure that the tabs on this end and the tabs on this end are the same. You can see like so, basically straight line across. You can also make sure your screws are facing the same direction. If you removed the screws, we didn't remove our screws here, so we just made sure everything's lined up. Also, this transmission, that little screw that goes in here, there's a little nub on the transmission housing that tucks into this bracket, so make sure you tuck that in. Make sure you've got your linkage in correctly, and you should be good to go. All right, then we're just going to reattach our rear drive shaft. And I think we're golden. Alrighty guys, we're all back together. This thing's pretty freaking sweet. Again, kind of surprised that it's all metal gears everywhere, so that's super awesome. Really excited for that. We're going to have to get a bearing kit though. What else? I think that's it. I think everything else on it's freaking sweet. The shocks seem good. I might put a little bit thicker oil in the shocks, just a little bit. Although they're pretty good as they are, but I do kind of like a little bit more dampening. I don't know what else I really want to do to it other than a few minor upgrades to get some extra weight down low. We'll do a video on these guys, but we've basically got overdrive gears, which I think are super important for any sort of serious comp crawler. Some front portals, brass covers, and then these guys. So that's going to get us a ton of weight down low. So we'll do a video on that. If the video's up, we'll post it right over here. If it's not over there, then it's not up yet, but it should be up shortly after this. What else we got? I guess that's it, right? We'll show a little graphic on the remote here. We also have a video. We can put it up here in the right-hand corner where it will show how to use the stock electronics here to do four-wheel steer, basically switching around your channel 3 and 4 and whatnot, and using your channel 3 to do rear steer. Overall impressions, man, I give this thing like a 9 out of 10. I'm super excited that now you can just basically buy a fairly close to comp ready truck right off the shelf. Super aggressive body, super aggressive chassis and skids, super aggressive tires. Should be fantastic for comp crawling. I don't think I mentioned it, but the tires do have some foams in there. They feel like single stage foam, so nothing crazy, but again, the tires pretty good, pretty good. Alrighty guys, well, if you enjoyed this, why don't you go ahead and put the Evo is a pro down in the comments below. You made it all the way to the end of this video. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, all those things you do at the end of videos. Hopefully you've already done it. We told you in the beginning to do it. Hopefully you're doing it now if you hadn't already. Also, we appreciate all of our channel subscribers. Huge thanks to everybody that's a channel member. Here's some information over here. You can kind of see it running through some channel member. What that is basically you can sign up and you basically get all the videos that we release early. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's longer. They just sit there while I some stuff out and promotions and whatnot, so you'll get to see them way earlier than some people and with no ads. Also, we have specific content that we put out every once in a while for channel members specifically. Also, there's other perks, priority response in comments, as well as reaching out to me personally if you have any issues on social media, stuff like that for different channel members. Anyway, check that out. There's also all of our swag. Here's some info on our swag. You can see all the different designs we have. We don't really make money on the shirts and hoodies and all that kind of stuff. It's just marked up like $1 or $2 so that we don't have to keep changing prices when they change their prices. We still do a lot of times, but it helps it so we don't have to do it as much. So maybe $1 or $2 over what our cost is, so we're not really making money on it. We just want to give you the opportunity to help support the channel in that way if you like swag. All right, guys, get out there and check this thing out. We'll put links down in the description. It is sick. You can snag one of these up on Heli Direct. They are US based, ship right out of Indiana, right in the middle of the country. So super fast shipping times, great customer service, and they've got these guys in stock. So check out the link down below for Heli Direct to snag one of these up. And until next time, guys, go out there, build something awesome, build a car, build a course, build a community, then smash it, crash it, and bash it, but don't break the expensive parts. Peace.